did video games first become a part of your life? How were you introduced to them?
Well, I was born in 1970, and so I was there at the beginning of everything. The video arcade, which don't exist today. Video games were a really colorful, brightly lit escape from everything else that was happening. Up until that point, comic books were the big, bright, flashy things that got your attention. Then it became the video games, and they were designed to catch your attention and hold your attention. This was back in the 80s, 70s, 80s, late 70s, early 80s. So.
What did you like about them? What did you enjoy about them?
They gave you a goal, something you could do. They kept a score, so you could compete with your friends. So you could have the high score, and there was something to attain or keep. You know, and your friends were trying to beat you, and you were trying to beat them, especially if you played two-player. It was a kind of a competition. And it was a really cool competition because there was nothing else like it. There was nothing competing with what you could get in an arcade at the time. Video game systems, home video game systems, didn't become a real thing until like 81, I think was when the first Atari came out. Well, before then you had Pong, but the Atari simulated what you could get in the arcades at your house. It was a very poor simulation, but it was the best there was. It was the best thing you could get at the time.
And what types of games are out there, and how are they different from one another?
Games vary a lot. You can have run, jump, shoot 'em ups. There are RPGs. There are text-based games. There are a ton of different types of games out there. It's according to all what you're into. What was that? Give me the question again.
What types are out there, and how are they different from each other?
What you do, what your particular skill set calls for. Like some people have good hand-eye coordination, so they gravitate towards games where you have to make fast decisions and you know, like head-to-head games like Madden and stuff like that. Or you have people that play like solo games where you like you said, the thought bubbles over your head. Mm-hmm. You're just talking to people and doing stuff. Like Final Fantasy is one of my favorites. One of the ones I think you would get into a lot if you play video games.
Kind of going on a journey.
Yes, the whole thing is
adventure.
Is an adventure.
Do you have a preferred genre of what type of game is your go-to, and why do you like that particular style of game?
RPGs, because I've always liked the leveling aspect of a game where as you walk your way through the world, you get stronger, you become more knowledgeable, you pick up better weapons and armor, and you get better as you progress. As you take in more of the story, you become better equipped to handle the things you run across. And so, those have always been my go-to games. But I do play all the games. I play sports games, I play shoot 'em ups, I run, jump, and kill games. I play them all, but that's my go-to, the Final Fantasy type games, RPGs.
Well, is there one in particular that was a favorite, or a particular series that was a favorite that you like the best?
Final Fantasy. I played it since I played it before it was mainstream, back in the early days. Final Fantasy 2, 3, Final Fantasy Tactics, Final Fantasy Mystic Quest, back in the 90s, early 90s. And so.
Is there a reason why it's your favorite?
Because I gravitate towards RPG type games, text-based games.
Did you like the characters as well?
Yeah.
Were they pretty well developed?
Well, the strange thing about Final Fantasies is every Final Fantasy is a different set of characters. Where in most game genres you got like a Lara Croft or a Samus Aran or a central character that you can depend on in every game to be in that game every game. But in Final Fantasy, the cool thing was every Final Fantasy has a different cast of characters, and you find one that you gravitate towards, and you play the game, go through the game with those characters, and so.
So it's getting to know a whole different set of
people. whole new set of cast.
And I guess you have to know who has strengths in certain areas and weaknesses in certain areas to progress in the game. Do the characters kind of work together that way?
You figure it out as you go along. So some characters are better suited for certain types of missions and adventures, and some characters have really cool design types. So you gravitate towards those characters if you play those type of characters.
When you're playing video games, are you usually by yourself? Do you play with friends? Do you play online?
Most of them I'm by myself, but more recently than in the beginning, of course, I play a lot of online games. Most of the games I play now are interactive games. I play there's a game called Warframe for the PS. It's for the 4 and the 5. I think you play it on 3 also, but it's an online game. You play with actual people, and it's a shoot 'em up, first person. You can be first person if you want it, or you can pull the camera back and it'll be third person. But Final Fantasy 14 is an online game. Also 11, which I also play. So yeah, those are online games.
Are there communities or social groups surrounding the gaming? And why might somebody want to be involved in that sort of thing?
Oh yeah, there are communities, and some of them are toxic. You join those groups because a lot of the content that you run into requires group play, and so you got to coordinate your attacks with them, or if you're in the healing group, you got to figure out who your tank's going to be, or who your particular group of people you're going to be healing, so you can keep those people alive. Or if you're going to be DPS, and you got to figure out where you're going to be hitting, or which mob you're going to be attacking at the same time. So the purpose of those communities, well, they're places to meet people like you, people that play the same game. But then a lot of times, if you need help with a particular thing, like if you're going to a dungeon and you need somebody to go through it with you, you can go, hey, anybody want to take whatever dungeon with me? And they'll be like, yeah, I'll go with you. And you go together and take it on.
It's teamwork.
Yep.
Does gaming include all age groups?
Yes.
Pretty wide.
Yes. I play with some bona fide 8-year-olds and play with people older than me, so in their 70s and 80s.
That's really neat.
And that'll probably be me if I live that long. Playing games for.
That's really neat. A whole wide range of age groups enjoying the same thing.
It's like Legos.
Can you tell us a bit about how video games have changed and advanced through the years? Is it more challenging to play now than it used to be?
Well, back in the day, there was no storyline. So there was a thing you were doing, and what you were doing was everything you were doing right there on the board. There was no I got to go get this thing and make this weapon or this set of armor. Nope, you were running a little yellow circle around the board, picking up dots and eating goats. And that was all you were doing the whole time. So it evolved from a single goal, that's all I'm doing the whole game, to a whole world of things you can be doing. You can become a blacksmith, or you can be a warrior, or whatever. It's evolved into everything you could possibly want to do in a game. The goals have changed from a very narrow field to whatever you can get into, whatever you're into. So
there's something for everyone.
Everybody. There's a hook for everybody.
Do you have any words of advice or encouragement for someone wanting to get into playing video games for the first time, or who may have stopped playing and wants to start again?
If you hadn't been bitten by the bug, then God bless you, and just keep doing whatever you're doing, whatever is making you happy, keep doing that. But if you want to get into a game, start simple. Start with something that's not really hard, because you don't want to get into I'm going to buy this game and it's like one of the hardest games in the field to play, and you get discouraged and don't ever want to play another video game. At the same time, you don't want to get a game that's too easy for you. And so most times if you go into a video game store and you talk to any of the people behind the counter, they'll tell you, if you ask them what's a real easy game to get into, they can guide you around to some good starter games.
I asked you all these questions because this is the first convention we've had in Brundage, Alabama. So
Right.
this may be a kind of an introduction to gaming for some people. And since it's a convention, I know at a lot of conventions they have, like at Dragon Con, there's
Right.
like a whole floor that's just
Mhm.
gaming. Is that an ideal place to start gaming if you want to just see
Well,
what the variety is? Or
well, yeah, you can walk around those places and look, but if you're talking gaming at conventions, you're talking all the gaming. You're talking about tabletop games like Dungeons and Dragons and Pathfinder and games like that. And those go on there too. And I've just recently, like, well, the year before last, I got involved in a Pathfinder game, and it was pretty fun. Yeah, that's a good place to start, a good place to look. Just, walk around those floors and check those games out and see what everybody else is playing. And you can get a good feel of what you might be interested in, what might be fun for you.
Imagi-Con is hosted by the library, so a special point of interest for us is literature and what people enjoy reading. And I know you're a comic book fan, so you like to read comics and cosplay comic book characters. How long have you been reading comic books?
I first started reading comics, I had to be probably one of the first books I picked up. My father was a collector, and I used to tear his collection up. And he must have hated it when I got into comics. Trying to think of, I had to be 5, 6 when I picked up my first comics. The artwork was, I can remember the artwork back then. It wasn't that great, but it was the colors were what drew me in. The bright colors, the action, the bigger than life characters, and so. Yeah, I've been reading comics my whole life, and cosplaying. You run out of the faves, and some of the bigger characters are done by some real prima donnas, so you kind of stay away from those costumes because you don't want to have to argue with anybody. Well, I'm the Batman of this group. Really? You're the Batman, and so, or I'm the Superman of this group, or I'm the Green Lantern of this group, I'm the Spider-Man of this group. Can't you play another character? Can't you bring another cosplay? Yeah, I could, but no. And so, but I like doing like strange cosplays anyway. Well, when I say strange, ones that hadn't been done yet. Like the first Amazing Man costume. This guy. And so.
How in-depth and complex would you say that the storylines of comic books are? Do they get pretty complicated? As
opposed to what they used to be? Well, back in the day, the comics were very strongly censored. And, as time progresses, they got a lot of leeway to do a lot more things. And so I remember them being just straight up, Batman shows up, punches everybody in the face, and the cops come pick everybody up, to, things where they're having to deal with the duality of their personalities versus their life versus what their life is in the costume, and you have to watch them juggle their lives between. And so the complexity has grown immensely, and you have love interests and deaths in the family, and everything that happens in the real world now happens in the comics, and you're like, I want to escape all this, but here it is on my page. And so it is what it is. And but there's a way, of course. I mean, the medium has to grow if it's gonna, keep attracting and keep readers interested. It has to pick up everything that's happening now. Like all the comic books are, picking up on the current political climate. And so everything has to stay topical, or there are some comics that don't deal with any of that stuff, and you can easily escape if you have to. But if you follow any of the main stories, they're either doing an allegory or they're doing a direct storyline about what's going on today. And so,
do you have a preference, one or the other? Do you prefer the escape? I
prefer the escape because I live a real life, so I I don't want to pick up a book and be like, oh, there's that political guy. There's that orange fella. I'm so tired of him on my TV. Now he's in my comics, and so yeah, I like to escape. I like to not think about what I actually have to deal with in the real world when I'm doing my fantasy thing or exploring this world. But again, it permeates everything, and a lot of comic writers and comic artists want to make a statement, drawing the line, showing you where they are, where they stand, and so you kind of can't get away from it. But again, there are a lot of comics that don't deal with it at all, and a lot of storylines that don't deal with it at all. Because you have to deal with it every day. Every time you turn on TV, oh, what's going on now? Oh no, they did what?
The stress.
So welcome escape.
How much of the story is told visually versus written words? Do good illustrations play a major role? I mean, can the artwork make or break a comic book?
Yes. There are a ton of artists that I hate, but because I'm a big Batman fan. I've always been a big Batman fan, and I have a rogues gallery of artists that I love doing Batman and artists that I hate doing Batman. But I had to read them or watch, go through it, their artwork, because if you're going to collect that particular book, you've got to deal with the artwork that, or whoever the artist that they had hired at the time to do the book, you got to deal with his particular portrayal of your character. Some of them are really good, and those guys normally rise to the top, and they become really expensive to hold on to. They become very sought out, so they'll do a run on your book, and then they'll go somewhere else, and you're like, come back, please come back. Just do a few more episodes, at least to cover. And so, and you're left with, the rank and file, the guys who are just, up and coming, who haven't reached the superstar status.
Wow, so you get to actually see artists progress in their careers by reading comic books. That's something I never thought of before.
And they typically go from just arting to writing at the point. Some of them are really good at it, and some of them are terrible at it. And so, I won't say names, but John Byrne. You get to, I really love him as an artist, but he has, for me, he has a very limited imagination. So instead of, him making foes that can challenge the hero, he'll make the hero less, so that he has to deal with, oh God, I don't know if I can throw my batarang straight enough to knock out this character. Oh, did I eat enough Wheaties when I left the house? You're like, I want this in my comic, and so again, you have different artists, different writers that you have to go through things with your. If you're going to collect that book, you've got to take the good with the bad.
They're putting their own spin on the story.
Sometimes it's great, and sometimes it's not.
Now, for those of us on the outside, me, can you tell us a little bit about the rivalry between Marvel and DC Comics, and what is that all about?
It's probably one of the most toxic conversations you can have.
Should I not have put this in here?
Oh, no, it's fine, because there's no one here to argue. Now, if there was someone here that could argue with it, I would be like, that had to be an interview all on its own, because it would be a and see, what the crazy thing is, I grew up reading both comic books. It was a long time before I realized that there was a difference between, I would be like, why doesn't Batman ever run into Spider-Man? And the crazy thing is, the schism didn't really happen until they started crossing over. Like, you would have a conversation with somebody like, well, Batman could be Daredevil, but it would just be a conversation between me and you. And me being a Batman fan, I would argue the points like, well, Batman would do this if Daredevil did this, la 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 la. But it was just me and you talking. Well, when they actually started crossing the characters over, and you saw, oh, Batman actually beat whoever, or Superman actually beat whoever, or Spider-Man actually beat whoever, then you're like, then the arguments became like canon. And like, well, you can't say that because in this issue, Spider-Man beats his character. And that's where the and so, but you still have a lot of people that want to take like characters from like the Marvel Cinematic Universe and the DC Extended Universe and like mash them together like who will win, blah blah blah. And it's not even a fair conversation because it's being told by fanboys. So if I'm in the DC camp, obviously Superman and everybody, Batman and Wonder Woman and all those guys are gonna beat everybody. If I'm in the Marvel camp, then Captain America and Thor and Black Widow and Black Panther, they're gonna beat everybody. And so, see, I grew up loving both, so I can look at them from a neutral standpoint and be like, yeah, that character can't beat this character because of this. And a lot of people have, especially on both sides, have limited knowledge of what's on the other side. So, because I'm a big Batman fan, I don't know anything about Captain America. If you ask me, well, I'm saying hypothetically because I know everything about Captain America. But you ask the average layperson, like if they're a big Batman fan, then they probably don't know anything about any other characters. And so if you ask them who could beat him, nobody can beat him. Because realistically, they don't know anything about the other side or what this character can do. And so you get these really biased, polarized conversations. And I will entertain them for a little while, but they get really toxic really quickly. So, and it happens a lot in comic book shops too. But it's
people are really invested.
It's fun banter at first, and then it gets toxic really quick. And so,
let's see. You kind of touched on how comics change through the years, so I'll skip that question. As a longtime comic book fan, would you say that movies based on comics have successfully portrayed what the books were about? Do they tell the whole story?
Some have, and in a lot of aspects they have. In all the Batman movies have been, not once has his trademark phrase, criminals are cowardly, superstitious, lied, must assume a form that strikes, fear, terror, a bat. He's never said that once in any of his movies. Not once. Not even alluded to that little speech. And that is his. In the comic books, that's his catchphrase. But he's never said it once in the comics. Now, Spider-Man. You've heard with great power comes
great responsibility.
Yes. And so you've heard that in a ton of Spider-Man movies, but you've never heard Batman's little catchphrase in one of his movies. So the depiction, I guess, depends on whoever the director, the writers, the showrunners are. But there are things that have been missing in recent comic books that the old school fans like. You probably remember the Christopher Reeve Superman series. You do? Compared to the new Man of Steel with Henry Cavill, whatever his name is. They're night and day. Like, this Superman was a true superhero for everybody. The newer Superman is, and how do you put this politely, kind of a stalker psychopath, kind of. He's focused on a single woman almost to a fault. Like, he lets everything else go just to focus on that thing. And it makes him a worse superhero for it. Where the old Superman was in love with Lois Lane, but he was also in love with the world. Like, he wanted to fix the world or protect the world. This one will save Lois Lane, but let his mom get kidnapped. And so, focus to a point, to a fault. And so, again, it's all according to the writers, and a lot of these writers want to be edgy and make things different. Well, this was that Batman, so now we're going to do it like this. And so they want to give you some kind of realism, and sometimes it comes off pretty cool, like the Batman Begins, The Dark Knight, were pretty good Batman stories, but they try and make them way too edgy, and they get away from the fact that in that instance that Batman doesn't kill.
So do you feel like I'm not tapped into all of this, so this is an outsider
It's all
perspective. You
good.
feel like
Okay.
sometimes they kind of break away from what the original superhero was. The superhero's not just saving this person, this group, that group, but like the world.
Right.
And there's kind of a wholesomeness to
Right.
to their focus.
And they missed that a lot in recent years, trying to make them more edgy, make you where Superman was, has God levels of power. He can do pretty much anything he can think of. He can turn back time. He can withstand a nuclear blast. There's nothing that can stop this dude. The new Superman, but he was tethered to a couple that grew up in Kansas, and so he had this really down to earth upbringing and saw the world like a regular human would. Mm-hmm. While this new Superman, even though he was raised by a couple in Kansas, doesn't have the same connect to the world. He's connected to one person. He's connected to Lois Lane, and he fixates on her almost to a stalkery, psychotic kind of level. And so it's weird to look at him. Like, the biggest problem a lot of people had with Man of Steel was the level of death and destruction that was depicted in the movies. Like Superman. Now, a lot of it couldn't be helped because of the villain, but the Superman of old would have figured out a way to get them out of the city, get Zod out of the city. This one fought him right there and destroyed everything. And so it's a matter of writing. Again, he just kind of didn't care about
humanity got left behind somewhere.
He just didn't care. Like, you see him, like, there's a scene where Zod pushes a tanker towards him. He just jumps over it and lets it explode behind him and explode right at the parking deck. There are probably people in that parking deck. Where the old Superman would have stopped it, would have done something and stopped it in its tracks, and not just like, okay, it's going to blow up behind me. I don't care. I'll just keep fighting. And so it's just a different world of writing. And again, they think this is better, like, let's be edgy, let's make this an edgy kind of comic. And they're like, you lost the whole point of the character. So.
I know your favorite comic book character is Batman.
You?
Why is he your favorite?
Oh, God, that is a story. It's funny you mentioned that because I was talking to Mom about it the other day. And I was like, she made a remark about Batman being my favorite superhero. And I was like, well, if you had gotten me, I said, it's all your fault. She goes, you're still going on about that? There was nothing I could do. The Sears was out of that costume. What happened was, me and my brother got there was these little costumes you could with a mask, and it came with a suit. And my brother wanted Spider-Man for Christmas, and I wanted Batman. I'd be like 4, maybe 5. And his suit they got. My suit was sold out. And so Christmas Day, he's got his suit running around being Spider-Man, and I'm like, where's my suit, Mom? And she goes, I'm sorry, baby. They ran out of your costume. And I was like, oh.
Oh, no.
And so,
poor little baby.
So I get to watch him, Spider-Man,
No.
Spider-Man, does whatever a spider can. And I'm just like, so it kind of, that trauma of not getting what I wanted kind of burned him into my psyche. And I'm like, okay, from this point forward, I'm going to be into everything Batman. And so here I am, still a Bat fanatic to this day. So she remembers me, like, being, mopey and sad on Christmas Day, and she was like, I had no idea that they were going to be out of that costume, son. Sorry. This is all your fault, Mom. This is all your fault. So, but yeah, that's how I got into Batman. And, it's so weird that I would gravitate towards a non-powered character to be my catch-all hero, but it's
because he doesn't have the superpowers.
Well, he's got super gadgets and he's rich,
yeah.
And so he can buy stuff, the latest whatever, and turn it into a gadget of his, help him fight crime. But he doesn't have any powers. He's just a dude, just a man. And I guess at first they used to irk me, but then it was like, oh, I could actually be this dude though. I could actually put on a costume, take many years of martial arts class, weight train, I could be this guy. And so he kind of connected with me on that level when I got old enough. And so I've stuck with him ever since. Been a Batman fan my whole life.
Can you walk us through the characters you've cosplayed and tell us a bit about how each one happened and why you did the characters, why you chose the characters you cosplayed?
Do we want to talk about all of them or just the ones I brought props for? Because the process I use is I typically go after characters that no one else is playing. Because there's so many people, especially in my little group, that they'll call a costume, and that's their costume forever. And it's great, and mostly it just sucks because you get typecast. Or
is that why you never have done? Have you done Batman?
Nope. That's why I hadn't done a Batman or a Superman. But I thought about doing a Batman or a Superman. Yeah. Maybe next con. Maybe next year I will do one. But those characters are soaked up by people who think they are they have exclusive rights to those characters. But then I like doing, there's a friend of mine, her name's Suzanne, and she does a lot of obscure characters from comics. And I was inspired by her to grab characters that hadn't been done yet, or done well yet. And so, one of the goals of me, personally, is when I do a cosplay, I want to go on Google, put in the character name, the company they come from, and cosplay, and I want to be the #1 search image on that costume. And right now, I think if you look up Gladiator cosplay, Marvel cosplay, I'm the #1.
Oh, you did it.
Yeah. And so for the longest time, I was at with Steel also, but there have been a lot of, I hadn't done them in a while, and there have been some people who've done it in between, so I'm like way down the list now. And so, but I'm still #1 with Gladiator. So the prop that I made with this one, the costume, the picture I sent you. And so that's my goal, my personal goal. But I gravitate towards characters that haven't been done yet. And there's a saying in the costuming, cosplaying community, either do it first or do it best. And so I like to go for first. But I've also gone for best because when I did Steel, I think someone had already done him, but I had one of the more memorable Steels. Matter of fact, that's how I kind of met Matt that way. He took a picture. This is long before we were even friends.
This was when you were covered in silver?
Yes.
Yeah.
That character. He ran up on me and was like, hey, can I get a photo? I was like, sure. And then years later, after we became friends, he tagged me in it, and I was like, oh, okay. I remember that. And so, but yeah, that's typically what I go for, is characters that I don't see cosplayed a lot, or ever. But again, my friend Suzanne, she does that all the time. She's done 1 trillion cosplays, and she's like one of my cosplaying heroes. And so, so I do what she does. I go for characters that haven't been done, so I don't have to worry about someone giving me a side eye if I show it in a Batman. So that's my process.
Do the characters gain a lot of attention when you're there because people have never seen them before?
Mm-hmm. Especially if you're the first one to do it, like that Gladiator, the picture I sent you, hadn't been done a lot because of the paint, the hair, and all that good stuff. It's a tough one to pull off. And I want to do it again at some point in the future, but I don't know when I'm ever going to do it again. But yeah, because of how hard it is to do, it's not, a lot of people don't try and tackle it. And there are a couple of costumes I want to try and tackle that are going to be pretty hard to put this level of difficulty with the makeup and all that good stuff. Because a lot of costumes are really cool. You can just slip them on, slip them off, no makeup, no excessive props, and those are fun costumes. But the ones that get you the most notoriety are the ones that take a lot of detail to get into.
I was about to ask which one was the most difficult to create for you.
but they all come with their difficulty level, especially if you're making your own props. Steel was tough because I've had a lot of different iterations of steel. I've rebuilt that hammer a bunch of times. This one, the U.S. Agent, get you what I'm talking about.
So cool.
Yeah, I put this together. This was I ordered a sled online. They had to sell these. This was a sled. You get into it and you slide down a hill in it. I countersinked all these screws that you see and bondoed them on this side. Then I painted this shield probably 20 times. I would paint it, not like it, strip it, start again. Paint it, not like it, strip it, start again. Paint it, there'd be something wrong with it, strip it, start again. And so this was a love-hate project. I really learned a lot painting this thing. And so I've let it go up all the years. You see all the little marks from it getting hit by stuff. And, oh God, look at that, that's primer. My kids tear them up or bump into them and mess them up. I'm supposed to repaint it and gloss coat it, but I haven't yet. Most difficult.
Or if you like, you can just touch upon certain projects. Okay, this is something that was tough for me to do, or this is something that went wrong, and I learned how to do it during the convention because.
Well, you learn a lot about costumes from wearing them on the floor. Like you play test them before you go down to the con, but there's nothing that will test a suit like being on the con floor. Like you'll learn what it's like to navigate a crowd in this, what it's like being out in the sun, what it's like to wear this for hours. Those are the things you can't play test at home that only happen at a con. Going up a flight of stairs in it, you know, it's or being in a crowded elevator, you know. I know people who go to cons and have wings on, and you have to account for the crowds and turning corners and stuff like that. And so I've not tackled anything like that yet, but it's in the same vein. You don't know what this is going to be like until you're actually on the floor with it. But the gladiator costume, as a matter of fact, I learned the difference between spirit gum and prosade. And prosade is it's a spirit gum and prosade are used to stick things to your person. And spirit gum is good, but you can't sweat with it on, or you're gonna sweat it off. It'll come right off. Now prosade won't come off. It'll stick to your skin. You have to. It's a process to get it off, but you want that so your costume doesn't come loose apart.
How did you find that out?
I was wearing that gladiator costume, and I went to a photo shoot and stepped out in the sun and doink, started sweating, and my wig, my bald cap pulled back on my head, and so you can see the difference between the color of my skin, my real skin, and the bald cap. And so I would pull it down, and I was sweating at that point, so I could stick it to my skin, but it would slowly creep back up my head, and so you learn. So, but these are things you have to be on the con floor to actually get a real feel for.
And it's nice because at a convention people feel for you. Like you said, there's some people walking around with costume patches and thread and hot glue guns. And what do you need to...
It has evolved, and there are people there to help you now. And so it has changed. There are a lot of good Samaritans walking around. There are people who will be your temporary handler, because a lot of these costumes don't have pockets. So if you got your wallet or your cell phone, if you don't want to have it in your hand, there are people that will hold it for you while you posing and doing your thing. And so
or if you want to have theme music.
Or there's that, you know what I'm saying? If you have a handler that you can bring with you, it's best, but again, there are a lot of people that'll do that for you.
And people have their heart into it because you'll. I think Matt and Karen were telling me they were in a parade one time, and this person had this fantastic costume you knew it just taken forever to put together, and during the parade it started falling apart, and everyone around them was like, "Oh no!" Everyone they felt the pain. Yeah.
I've been in that situation where the costume starts wearing you at that point. Matter of fact, with Gladiator, I had to go to a friend's room to get the makeup put on, and so I got the makeup.
Theme music.
Yes. I went to his room, got the makeup put on, and I left my room key, my wallet, my shoes, and everything in that room. And so when the shoot was over, I went back up to get my stuff, and the guy who was in the room was gone. And I was like, hey, can I get them? I don't have any access to anything. And he wouldn't answer his phone. And when I finally got him, he was like, well, it'll probably be an hour before I get back. So I had to walk around the con floor in that costume for hours, longer than I wanted to. And I had on red contacts in that one. And
ow.
yeah, it was something else. It was painful after a point. Like I said, I had to go eat in that costume and everything. And people were like, like I saw people that were at the photo shoot that had, dressed into regular clothes, and they were looking at me like, why are you still in that costume? And I'm like, I can't get out of it. My stuff's in the room. And so, again, there are a lot of things that happen at con that you can only experience at a con. You can only experience this at a con. You can't factor this in. Well, I better take this because this is going to happen. You have no idea what you're up against until you get there.
You make a lot of friends at con. That's how you met Matt, and you make friends at the photo shoots. I know the superhero photo shoots are amazing.
They are. They are.
It's almost like those comic book covers where they have every individual character, and they pose people like this, and it's just massive crowd of superheroes.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's like a dream come true.
Met a lot of friends that way.
Mm-hmm. A member of the superhero costuming forum, and I met them. At those one of those big shoots, became a member of that group at one of those shoots.
Do you have a character that you haven't played yet that you're?
There are tons. Well, I mean, the dream is to play one of the big characters, a Batman or a Superman. But that's down the road. I'm having fun with the little bit characters I can find, and so there are a ton of characters that I haven't done yet. That haven't been done well yet, and I'm waiting to get it in. And so,
what advice do you have for first-time cosplayers?
Start simple. Work your way up. If you're gonna be building your own props, then there's gonna be a lot of R&D, and it's rather expensive. This cost me so many coats of paint. The bondoing and the handles I made and stuff, that was simple stuff. The paint is what cost me everything. And waiting for the paint to dry cost me everything. Because you don't know, like a couple of times when I painted this thing, when I went to pull the tape off, the paint would go with it. And I'm like, what am I doing wrong here? And so, start simple is what I would suggest. Start with something that only requires like just putting on something. Put on a mask, put on a suit, and boom, hit the floor. You can go harder later when you've had a feel for what a con floor is like, what a photo shoot is like, how long you're gonna be sitting in this costume in this pose. Start simple. Side note, a little bit of insight on the R&D. I bought a sled. You typically use this, get in it, and slide down a hill on it. And I needed something strong because I was going to be attaching leather straps to it so I could hold on to it. So it had to be of certain thickness and diameter so I could sink screws and bolts into it and make them disappear, bond them, and then paint over them so you wouldn't see it on the other side. Nowadays you can buy a shield like this, but really what made me make this is there was a guy who was selling them online. He was selling them for like $1,500 a piece. And I was like, what? I know what I'll do. And so, yeah, I bondoed the handles. You can't see the bolts on the other side because I sunk them and sanded over them. And this hook here Can you see? I was gonna say I keep putting it down. I don't know
I can see it when you hold it up. Like from your knee up, you can see, but you can't see any of the couch.
All right. So these hooks here, I was wearing a special harness that allowed me to just put it on my back and walk around with it, and it will still hook on me now. But because this is not a harness, it'll pull my shirt down. But it's on me right now. So. But that's how it worked.
But you ran into some trouble attaching the hooks?
Yes. I first tried a magnetic harness, but it wiggled, and if I wiggled too hard, it would fall off. I tried hooking it here, but because I painted this side for whatever reason, primed this side for whatever reason, it came right off. So I had to clean a spot, and what I meant to do was do the same thing I did with these, is countersink two bolts and hook them right there. That way they would never come off ever again.
But you ran out of time?
Ran out of time because you've only got so much time before you've got to go to con. And so if I had maybe another week, 2 weeks, I probably would have done that.
And how did you make everything symmetrical on this side?
Right. I wish I brought it with me. It's a huge protractor, and I hit the center of this, and I had measured out how big this was and how big I could make the rings so that they were all even. I think it's like I went 2.5 inches on every one. And what I did out here dictated how big the circle and the star was in the middle. And you know what? If I had to do it again, if you had a gun in my head, I can't remember how I got the star so straight. I don't know. I can't remember what I did. But
magic.
Yeah, it was magic because I needed to do it, and I did it. And so necessity is the mother of all ability and invention.
So the protractor helped you get all the lines even
Yep.
all the way around.
So I would stick it in the middle, and then I would go zoop, then I would go out 2.5 inches, zoop, and then I would go out 2.5 inches, zoop. And it had a really sharp point on it, so I could drag it, and so I could see it from that point forward. So every time I would lay the tape on it, the painter's tape, I had that line to go on. So painter's tape the whole thing, except the parts I was painting. That's after I primed it. And then I would paint the circles. And then, again, this was a labor of love and hate because sometimes I would pull out the tape and the paint would go with it. And so it was a lot of crying and
And why did you repaint it so many times? Was it the color was off, or was it just?
Sometimes it would just, like if you look at it really closely, you can see the places where I had to pull the tape off because they don't make curved tape, which is probably something I could corner and make $1 million off of, but they don't make curved tape. So you can see the spots where I had to pull the tape off, and you can see the little ridges of the edges of the tape where I pulled them off. But from far away, you can't see that. From far away, it just looks like a shield, like perfect circles. But up close, you can see the imperfections.
So how many times did you repaint it?
About 20 times. About 20 times. Sometimes it wasn't my fault. I would pull the tape off, the paint would go with it, so I had to start all over. And sometimes it would be perfect. But there was one thing off, and I would just take everything off and just start all over again. And if I wish I could have kept track of how much I spent on primer and paint, because I probably blew a whole paycheck on it. It was just crazy. I got so tired of it at the point I was like, I'm not even gonna wear a shield at the I'm just gonna wear the costume. And so, but I pulled it off at the last minute, and here it is.
I'm glad you did.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
Yeah, well, I learned a lot. I wanted to do a Taskmaster this year because of the Black Widow movie, but it's going to be the classic Taskmaster, not the new one in the movie. And I'm probably going to paint that one too. And I've learned so much about painting just from doing this one. I can make, like I was telling you, the guy that was charging all the money for shields, I can make the shields. This shield probably cost me, with everything, like if I was going to make you one, I could probably do it for less than $100. For way less than $100.
Because you have the knowledge of
I know how to do it. Now I think what a lot of what that guy was paying for is just convenience. Because if you don't want to have to go through this, you'll just pay the money and be done with it. And I can't say when I got to the end, if I had it known then, what I knew back then, now, I probably just paid the money and be like, here, take this, take all 1,500 of these dollars. But I learned a lot. And it's like that with everything. You learn a lot in R&D about.
There's also the sense of accomplishment.
Oh yeah.
It's like this was this was an art project.
Oh
This
yeah.
was a work of art.
A super art project.
Thank you for talking with us and sharing all your time and talents with us. We appreciate
My
it.
pleasure.